Welcome back, everybody, to the Sexy Business Podcast and happy Halloween. I'm your host, Spooky Dangerous, with a special new outfit on that I totally didn't find in the rubbish this afternoon. And joined with me, as always, is the ever lovely Goth Neko. Say hello.
Boobs.
And this very special, specifically Halloween occasion, as we have been trying to do for the whole month, we have picked out a spooky themed lewd game. Now, you might be asking the question, hey, I can see that logo on screen. Looks like you're about to talk about Love Sucks. Didn't you guys do that already? And that's true. We did cover the first part of Love Sucks, and now we're back with more content because since then, more content has been released for us to have a little bit of a deep dive into. Now, Neko streams a whole bunch of it, about 4 hours worth, so it's definitely worth going and digging into it if you want to get your, first. It's not really first hand if you're not playing it. I think it's literally a second hand resource at that point. If you want to experience the game second hand instead of third hand, where we're talking about seeing the experience, go and look at the stream. God, I'm a good podcast host. But we are going to dig into this game a little bit. Do you want to start with some highlights and lowlights, potentially, Neko?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give like a really brief overview for folks who haven't heard of this series or you didn't watch the original video, because you're not a true fan. But Love Sucks is by Art Witch Studios, and it is a very like rom-com-y sort of visual novel where basically there's a lot of sort of fantasy lore going on in this series, but you have discovered that there is a succubus and a vampire on your college campus, and they are planning some sort of ritual that involves you dying. And so night one is very much about sort of setting up these characters and the magical situations that they get in and some of the stakes, pun intended. And then night two expands on that in a very huge way. Night one was sort of like a demo of sorts or a proof of concept where it was, I would guess about like a 4-ish hour read. It had some great stuff in it, lots of art, all of the different characters and scenes and things like that. And then they basically used night one to build up hype for night two. So night one was free, but night two costs about $10, though it is on sale right now. So, take advantage of that if you can. And it's a much bigger game. Now, granted, just for transparency, I've basically only played what feels like a little bit past like sort of the introduction or like chapter one of the game, if we had to divide it up like that. So it's very possible there's stuff that gets even crazier in the latter half of the game that we just don't know about. You might have to find out. But even in just this first chunk of the game that I played, I already noticed like a ton of improvements and adjustments to make this a little bit more engaging. So, for one, it looks like they've kind of beefed up the story or the lore a little bit, though they do it in a very nice way. So, there's plenty of people who play a game like this and they just see succubus titties and hot vampire, and they're like, I do not give a shit about the world building. I don't care about the plot. I just want to see some tits. And the game makes it very easy to skim through the lore. There's these sorts of sections where the characters will like have like 6 dialogue options that are like, "Can you explain this? What's going on here?" But if you just go to the bottom-most option, it'll be like, "Hey, can you progress the plot?" So if you are someone who really likes world building, you have the option to get to know more about each of these different characters, like some of their motivations, what's going on with this ritual. But also, if you're someone who's like, I just want the bare minimum of story and I just want to see boobs, that's also an option. Though one of the things I did really like, there was a longish introduction, at least relevant to sort of our metric that we've talked about in the past. That if you're a good porn game, you should show me boobs in like the first 30 minutes at the longest. And if you go much beyond that, it can give a bad first impression. And the beginning of this game is sort of a lot of lore. It's a little bit of a plot refresher too, because I think they anticipated that a lot of people played Night One a long time ago and didn't really remember what happened. So there's a bit of a TLDR at the very beginning. But, there's sort of these, like, little etchy moments in between these, like, lore dumps and character dumps. So, for example, at the very beginning, you get some nudes from, the 2 main characters, Jan and Anna, and so you get to look at them, doing some sexy lewd poses. And then even when you're, like, talking to some of the other characters, like, you get another photo and you show the girls. Or much later on even, there was a part where I was talking to Anna, and she was like, "Oh, like, a long time ago, I did this huge gangbang with, like, 5 guys." And it briefly, the main character basically imagines this, and you get a CG of what happened. So even though that was a scene that quite literally didn't happen in the game, they had a way of sort of still giving you, a little bit of titillation to sort of help you in between some of the, sex scenes. Though when it gets steamy, it gets real steamy, and, we'll be talking about that when it comes to kind of like the first major lewd scene that I got to.
Yeah, which is, and for context for the viewers, what I literally experienced right before we started recording because I was watching Neko's part 2 video right before we started this. So I'm also up to date on all of the steamy content. And I think it's done really well, but like you said, we will dig into that a little bit. I want to start by talking about each of the, not like main characters, but like the more, this our 5 girls, I think is the best way to put it. So like you said, we've got, I believe it's Anna the succubus, Jan the vampire, Dr. Blankenship, who is the witch, and Naomi, who is the demon. Now, I don't remember Dr. Blankenship at all from part 1. Was she even in it?
I believe she was briefly. I think she was like your professor, and like you have like a classroom section with her, or she shows up. But I don't think she was involved in any of the lewd scenes.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe it's especially because she's designed to have such an enormous rack that maybe there was like a lot of fans clamoring to see her in action, and so they were like, "Yeah, let's put the gas on that one," and kind of made that happen. So I guess let's start with Anna our succubus because you did kind of mention her. She is kind of what you'd expect with the more bustier kind of traditional figure, maybe more like a almost teetering on blonde bimbo kind of stereotype with that. However, she got a nice upgrade where she does wear glasses for one of the scenes. I'm a big glasses enjoyer. I love a blind bitch, I guess. Look, if she can't fucking make out what I look like, I got a better chance. And so like that seemed to actually work nicely with her character design as well. But they also are, because it's Halloween, wearing costumes and stuff a lot. So it's interesting to see how they design a character and go, okay, it has to have these kind of iconic silhouette, iconic facial designs in some ways. Like you mentioned in the VOD, that Dr. Blankenship has a couple of beauty marks that do help her be differentiated from the other characters. And then when we have to put them in other outfits and also be naked for a bunch, we still need to be able to figure out who is who. And I think that is done really well. And so then we have Jan, our vampire character, who is still kind of hourglassy, but she's much more lithe. And they do have a lot of dialogue in the game, kind of comparing the two. In the like "Never Have I Ever" section, it's like, "Oh, but mine are bigger" kind of a thing. And I feel like a lot of it kind of comes down to that not competition, but like almost rivalry between them, as like a way to help you move things forward or encourage them to move things forward. And then we have Dr. Blankenship, who is, I guess, hot for teacher, kind of a stereotype thing. But she's also, like, big reveal, she's also a witch. And then she, I think, has the most exaggerated hourglass shape with that one. You also get some big hat content, which I appreciate. We love a big hat. The hat stays on during sex. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think she's going for more of a milfy kind of vibe. And then Naomi, which is a little bit more of a muscle girl kind of thing, like really, really grumpy bench kind of vibe. And you see her in both her demonic form and her non-demonic form quite a bit. So I guess depending on which one you prefer, it is kind of an outfit change. But I don't know. Do you have a favorite? Oh, hang on. Before I'm also missing Best Girl, and I don't know if she really counts or not because we didn't see any scenes with her yet, but we also have a furry character, Addie, who is adamantly not a werewolf, but has a wolf form. Who I think she's like steals the show a little bit, but just also has no erotic scenes yet. So I'm really hoping that we see more of her in future updates, because I'm curious to see how that's going to go. But she also seems like kind of lewd averse, so it would be like a Taming of the Shrew kind of vibe. God damn, this is a fucking deep and philosophical podcast for me to be referencing Taming of the Shrew. Anyway, Neko, do you have any favorite characters amongst these five?
Yeah, I was also really into Addie. Now she is new, so she was not in part one. So they added her in, and feel free to tell us in the comments if we just didn't get to the part where she apparently gets like an amazing sex scene at the very end of night
Yeah,
two.
dog cock reveal.
Um,
Let's go.
she's not in any of the promotional images, which is why I feel like maybe they're planning on saving her for night three. So like this is like the introduce the character episode, and then they're gonna see how the fans react, and maybe if she gets enough of a reaction, they're gonna include a furry scene in night three. Because sometimes furry content can be like a big turn off for some hentai fans, so it could just be dependent on like sort of fan response. But I really liked her. She's kind of like a little like manic and awkward. And her furry form is legitimately very cute. I also like that it's an actual furry and it's not just like, oh no, I have wolf ears and a tail. This is so embarrassing. Like, no, she actually gets way taller and has like a significant like werewolf change. I also really like her color scheme. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Sombra if she was white. Um, she's got like the big like swoopy hair with like the kind of gradient like black to purple. And yeah, I am like a little 50-50 on if she'll actually get a lewd scene or not, because it seems like she's more of like a comic relief character so far to come in and like be a little silly, do all the hacker stuff. But here's hoping for night three. Though I will say I'm also a very big fan of Anna the succubus. This is despite the fact that I normally go for the small titty characters, and I will say Jan looks a lot like Marceline from Adventure Time. Now, like, granted, any long-haired, black-haired vampire could look like Marceline, but I feel like she looks a lot like Marceline. But I really liked Anna because one, she kind of reminds me of Princess Peach, and I am a major Princess Peach fan. I've loved her ever since I was a kid. But I do like what they did with her personality, where on one hand, she is kind of playing into the trope of the succubus, where she is very flirty and cute and a little silly and dumb sometimes. But in part two, especially, we get to kind of learn a couple of like little random cute things about the girls. So, for example, there is a part where Anna basically accidentally gets suckered into being part of a kissing booth, and she is actually extremely nervous and upset about it because she doesn't like being objectified. In her sexual encounters, she likes sort of, having some sort of connection, flirting, even if it's just like a one night stand, like feeling like you're still being acknowledged as a person. So the idea of literally just, standing there and being kissed by a bunch of strangers is actually like very uncomfortable for her. And I thought that was a really cool way to add something unique to the succubus trope.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that we do here at THM, and we put a lot of time and focus into, is kind of building that immersion and developing lore around the reasons why these weird things exist. Whereas most porn is kind of just like, here is this character, they do this thing, and you're just kind of accepted to, expected to just kind of get that that's happening. Or in a lot of movies, it's like, oh, there was a zombie apocalypse, by the way, there's zombies now. And you're like, okay, sounds great. And you kind of move on with it. Whereas looking at an established character trope as a way to communicate the basis for a thing, but then going, okay, actually this thing is different, or because of that thing that you do know, you would be surprised to learn that this is actually a problem, or playing against the grain or whatever. It makes for much more interesting storytelling, but it also gives you the ability to kind of communicate something about the character, help you build like a real connection with the character beyond what the stereotype is. Because if something is just a stereotype, there's nothing there for you to connect with because you've already experienced it. Really, like, And so when they go, oh, actually, here is this cool character flaw that I have, or here is this, really specific desire that I have, or trauma dumping kind of stuff also kind of does it as well. You get a chance to, really meet character rather than talking to a PNG.
Yeah, I think that's something that this series does really well is I think it has like this perfect sweet spot of, being just more than just like another porn game, but it also doesn't go too far in the other direction of having so much plot that it kind of turns people off. That's something that's like expected in a lot of I find Japanese visual novels. There's a lot of like ecchi or NSFW Japanese visual novels that are like extremely long. Like, I mean, you have to read for dozens of hours, and then the sex scene is at the very end.
Yes,
Or
filler.
like yeah, or like they're like 40 hours long and there's like a sex scene like every 3 hours, but there's actually like a lot going on in between that. And most I would say Westerners, especially Americans in my experience, are not going to read that much. I've seen a lot of complaints on these of like it's too long, there's too much reading. Where's the sex? This isn't even like an SFW game. So a lot of us have these stories that we want to tell where we want to have the really cool lore and world building and all of that. But when you're designing for the specific niche, you just have to keep in mind like fan expectations. Most people are really just here for the smut. And that's why I really like this series is I think it does a good job of having just enough that's interesting and doing some unique things with these girls. Like it's the same thing with Jan, where she's not like just like a stereotypical like, ooh, I'm scary dominatrix vampire. Like, no, she has like some insecurities that she deals with. Like she has her own things that's going on for her. Even like minor characters or like characters we haven't gotten to know as much, like Addie or Blankenship, are still like unique. Like I like that Blankenship is like a total nerd about magic. She's not just like the suave, flirty older woman teacher, but like when they start talking about magic, she gets like super excited about it. And that was something that was really cute to see. And then even with Naomi, who is sort of like, she's the typical, like, a little bit of a tsundere. She's got that like fiery outside, but she also has this cool thing going on with like the whole like, oh, like I'm a part demon, but I'm also like a demon hunter. You get some cute moments with her. Like she's always getting you burritos, which I think is amazing. She has like big, like best friend energy, like best friend who I would also have sex with energy. And I think that's great, especially in a game like this that really has more of like a harem routing style. This is not a game where you're going to get to choose different characters. There's not like an Anna route and a Jan route and a Naomi route. It's more like you will get to fuck all of these characters. In fact, I think you have to fuck all of these characters, but they're cool with it. Everyone here is like very like sex positive, non-monogamous, and you kind of get to decide like who you want to get a little bit more invested in. So do you want to spend some more time learning about Naomi's lore? Are you going to try to get all of Jan's scenes because she's your best girl? And I think that's something that works really well for this genre. Like basically you could spend a ton of time with this game. I was looking at like Steam hours for the reviews, and like some people had like 15 hours in this game. So maybe they really spent time like enjoying their different playthroughs. And some people only had like 6 to 7. So you could also just like do one playthrough, get the scenes that you get, and then say, oh, well, I'm going to just wait until night 3 comes out. And I think either way, you get your money's worth out of this. And I think either way, people have seemed to really enjoyed it.
I did want to add a little extra example there as well, because there's a cute scene kind of towards the beginning, like when you mentioned they're texting you pictures, but they do the one finger challenge type thing where it's like they're starting with Anna is fully naked in front of the mirror, but puts her hand up with one finger between the camera and the mirror to kind of cover all of the fun parts, right? Now, because Jan is a vampire, she doesn't have a reflection and can't do the same thing, but wants to take the same picture. And Neko clocked it straight away that it was still Anna's finger that was the thing doing the covering instead of Jan doing it herself. But that wasn't mentioned until afterwards when they kind of clued together that that was the thing that had happened. So not only is like not having a reflection or not being able to use a mirror an interesting but like classic vampire problem, they found a funny, sexy, modern interpretation of this issue and was able to use that to communicate something about her character to the player, which I thought was really cool. And it's like, Again, playing away from the stereotype.
Yeah, now speaking of sexy things, I think we do have to actually talk about the sexual content in this game because that's obviously a really big part of it. Now part one, I was already really impressed with. I think it does a really good job at including a lot of different kinds of smaller scenes. Basically, there's sort of a mechanic. As I mentioned, the girls are working on some sort of ritual that may or may not involve you dying, either by like essentially having all of your energy drained, succubus style, or having all of your blood drained, or both. And as a result of this, we, through some magic, can basically keep on respawning to the beginning of the night. So in night one, you're very much encouraged to experiment, to do the stupid things that are definitely going to get you killed. So for example, if you let Anna, I think, give you head without a condom, she basically kind of like goes a little feral and accidentally like kills you. Same thing that actually happened in night two is there was a option where basically I could either stick my dick in Anna or Jan's mouth, and then I stuck it in Jan's mouth, and because she is a vampire, she like smelled all the blood that was going to his cock and was like, ah, chomp chomp. So there's lots of these like little sexy bad ends. There's no bad ends that are actually upsetting or like dark or anything like that. So if you're someone who is like, I don't want any endings where like it's going to be really upsetting or I'm going to get rejected or actual like bad stuff is going to happen, that's very much not this game. I guess that's another thing to note is like everything in this game is super consensual. Like everyone is very excited about having sex. Like even in the case of so Naomi and Dr. Blankenship have to have a threesome with you for lore and plot reasons, definitely. And even though like Naomi is like a little bit like reluctant at first, mostly because she's just like, ugh, I can't believe I have to do this. She still gets very into it once it actually starts. Like she's clearly having a great time, especially with Blankenship. I think Naomi maybe likes women a little bit more. And then the other thing I do want to say is the main character also has a very nice design. This is something we don't always get in visual novels. Usually you get like boring, generic male protagonists. And so I'm always so happy when the main character is at least decently attractive. And I actually really like this main character. I think he's hot. Like he's a little bit femmy. I saw some people complain about that in some of the reviews. That's not a complaint for me. That's a benefit. Like he's just kind of he has like a nice, cute design, and I think he is intentionally supposed to be a little androgynous. There is another character in the game who is, I think, was originally planned to be a female main character, and I haven't looked into the last update on that. But as of now, I don't think that's going to happen. It might happen like post-release when the game is fully out. They might go back and add some sort of DLC or option where you would see scenes with this female main character. But that really helped me for like the sex scenes because when you see him, like again, like I like that the whole image is attractive, that everyone here looks thoughtfully designed. It's not just like super hot, well-designed women and then the most boring male character you have ever seen in your life.
Safe to say we're not going to catch you browsing the ugly bastard tag on nhente.net. But I do kind of agree, and it's really convenient I have a bag on my head of this exact argument so you can't see that I'm in fact a well-designed and attractive protagonist. But I think the art style often, in some of these cases, lends itself to drawing women, and especially they make the characters feel so soft in general, right? So I think mostly because of that, the main character, it makes sense for them to feel like they lean more feminine because perhaps that's where the experience of the artist is. And it's like, look, if you're an artist that draws porn, drawing women is the thing that makes you money and probably the thing that you do way more often. So it does kind of make sense to have more experience in that field. Like some games, a lot of the time, will just have a completely hidden protagonist and then you just see a disembodied dick or something whenever it becomes relevant. Which I think is harder to insert yourself sometimes because like I don't necessarily need to be playing something at a POV. A lot of the time I'm happy to be like, good for him, you know, get that bag. But then like I'm still able to enjoy women being sexy and doing stuff without necessarily me having to think I'm the main character, you know. So I do agree. I think it helps it be more cohesive because the main character feels like they fit there and kind of fit together. And I know, kind of a brief shout out to the background art and design as well, because I think it also helps build a cohesive design for all the different locations. I think my favorite is Blankenship's house, or tree house, or some shit. Has like a
Pocket
really,
dimension.
yeah, has like a really cute foyery kind of area, but it's like with the color choice and a lot of stuff like that, it does like really communicate the vibe really well. And like Addie's room, comparatively, is very different. It has this kind of wide angle where you can see the computer on one side tilted outwards, and you can also see the bed on one side tilted outwards. And there's something to say when it comes to a visual novel, that you know that the outermost thirds are going to be covered with people, or if there's one person talking, the middle third is going to be covered by a person. So it's really hard actually to position background elements in a reasonable way. We have this problem with Shackles a bunch, where some of the rooms have a bed in a place where if you put a character talking there, it's like not really where they're standing. That is kind of awkwardly in front of this thing, and it's not like really easy to kind of place it or whatever. Like for example, the main character's bedroom. If anyone is standing in the middle of that scene, they're like kneeling on the bed to talk to you, which is a bit weird. A thing that I think this game does kind of well, where it like really does leave space for people to be and do stuff, or it will have specific CGs for a character talking. Like when we first meet Addie, she's hiding behind the door, and they have the different expressions and stuff specifically for her, you know, hugging onto the door while she's questioning you and who you are and why you're here to come and talk to her. So I think a lot of attention to detail and a lot of emphasis is put on the immersion into this world to make you actually care about the characters and actually be interested in the story, so that you can go through and be excited when the characters reveal things to you, or when you finally get to have sex with the characters and interact with them and stuff like that, which is much more in my preference. That's kind of how I like these games to be. But we have talked about this before, and I know you did kind of mention this at the beginning. We do still need that tempo of interest where you are seeing kind of, you know, boobs in the first hour. You kind of are seeing some lewd and interesting stuff as it goes along and as it builds up to like actual plot and interesting things. Sexy, funny things can be happening along the way without it necessarily being yes, finally my crush confessed to me and then we doinked the end. You can have lots of other silly, funny things along the way. Once again, My Dress Up Darling is a really funny example of this. We've had 2 seasons, and spoiler alert, you probably could have figured this out on your own, but Wakano Gojo and Marin Kitagawa haven't had sex on screen. But we've seen a side character's whole pussy just randomly revealed to Wakano Gojo in like the 3rd episode or some shit. And it's like, I personally don't think this was necessary because it's not a porn TV show. But they were like, this is really important to show that he is dealing with these kind of things, right? And I think it's the same kind of thing. We know that there's going to be some kind of romantic or emotional climax later on. There still needs to be little bits and pieces along the way that keep you excited and keep you kind of alongside that character's mental state. Like, the character is definitely horny, otherwise he wouldn't say yes to all the crazy shit that they do in Love Sucks. So you kind of have to be in that same, you know, position, that same mental state as you're going along the journey with them, which means that you have to be enticed in some of the same ways that they are. If the main character is imagining all these crazy things happening, you should be seeing it so that you can be not imagining it, you can be experiencing it. Always show instead of tell, kind of a problem. But that is almost going to bring our episode to a close. Did you have any last little bits to add, Neko?
Yeah, I guess on one final note, we should mention there is voice acting in this game. It is partial voice acting, so it's mostly during the lewd scenes, and then like occasionally during like plot relevant moments the characters will speak, or during introductions. So there are some little bits and pieces of a voice acting, and I'll say especially during the lewd scenes, I thought it was really great. I think they chose some great actresses for the female leads. They do a really good job at sort of embodying the respective character types of like, mean bitch and, bubbly succubus and kind of like suave vampire and all of that. And I thought like the way they incorporated things like moans and sound effects into the actual scenes was well designed. We all know that Spooky is generally a hater of those, and
Yep.
I sometimes am a hater.
Yeah, I have
Sometimes
dick
think
sucking misophonia. The fucking moaning was great, but then listening to the dick sucking sounds, I'm like, please stop.
Yeah, so like sometimes like sound effects can be 50-50. But I did think that the actual voice acting was very good, and it really helped to kind of immerse in the scene itself because I really like the dialogue during the scenes and like the writing during the scenes, I should say. I've read a lot of terrible visual novels that have the most unsexy writing in the actual sex scene dialogue and descriptions I've ever seen in my life. Where it's like they want you to skip through it and just look at the CG. It's that bad. And this one actually has like really good writing. There was no times where like I cringed at how they described something, and I thought like the dialogue between the characters during things like threesomes, for example, was very fun.
All right, you ready to wrap this one up? Do you want to tell everyone what buttons they can click?
Yeah, it's Halloween, so you should treat us to something nice. And by that I mean you should hit the subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell so that way you get notified every single week when we upload a new video.
Ring the bell, ring
And
the
as
bell.
always, yeah, and leave us a comment down below. Did you play night 1? Are you considering picking up night 2? If you did play it, who's best girl and why is it Anna? Do you know other spooky games that maybe we'll play in the future, or just other lewd games in general? If you have something that came out recently that you've been really hyped about, we do appreciate recommendations, and we have responded to them before. So let us know what you're into. And then lastly, you like us, I hope. So you should also hit the like button. Then next month, we'll be probably turning away a little bit. We've been doing some spooky stuff for October. We'll be going back to just talking about other general things. And also, congratulations to all of you who participated in October. I bet you're very excited for midnight to hit. Good job, and good luck to all of you who are following it up with No Nut November. But otherwise, that's it for us for tonight, and we will see you next time on the Sexy Business Podcast.
Bye
Bye, everybody.
bye.